Hey folks, welcome to NixOS number 74, building a NixOS image for Raspberry Pi. Part 3, the long-awaited sequel, The Empire Strikes Back. In part 2 of this series, I managed to be able to get a Raspberry Pi 2W up and running on NixOS and updating its software while it was running. We weren't able to do that before in part 1. And in this video, as I've been promising all along, I'll be trying to report my findings about trying to get hardware to work. Spoiler alert, it's not good news. The talkie script for this video, by the way, the one entitled NixOS 74, available in a link in the description. So I made some changes to this repository that I have set up. I forked this repository from a guy named Pierre, but I've made some significant changes to it. Before this video, despite its name, it's called NixOS Pi 02, but at this point, despite the name, it now has explicit Pi 4 support, and it actually might support Pi 4 a little bit better than the 02. And we now have two build targets. One is to build a Pi 4 image, which we build with this stuff, NixOS configurations Pi 4, blah, 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 blah. And to build a 02W related image, we use NixOS configuration 0W. And in either case, the image ends up in result/stdimage/pi. There's some stuff if you're going to run it yourself. There's some stuff you need to change in common.nix, like the username and networking stuff. I've made some changes to the configurations, in particular the kernel used on the Pi 4 and the configurations, hardware configurations of each device have been changed. The Pi 4 kernel is not the mainline kernel anymore. It is the one called Linux RPi 4, and I think that is the kernel that ships with Raspberry Pi OS. For the Pi 4, I'm now using stuff from this NixOS hardware repository to better configure it. Inside of here, it's got things that purport to help with audio and video and various other add-on devices, but we use it in our configuration to try to make various things work that still don't, but it got us further. Anyway, some things do work as a result of using that. There are no Pi 3, Pi 02, or Pi 5 configurations in NixOS hardware yet, so I can't use one for the 2W. And the Pi 4 image won't boot on a 02W. Here's the results of my testing. At the moment, these are the results of just me trying to make GPIO, Ethernet, sound, Bluetooth, USB mass storage stuff work on both the 0W2 where applicable and the Pi 4. So first thing I tried was GPIO, and the way I tested it was through the Python library named rpi.gpio. This actually works on a Pi 4. It can blink an LED. It does not work on the Pi on the 02W. We just can't import the library. It says it can only be run on a Raspberry Pi. I'm not sure how to convince it that this is a Raspberry Pi on the 2W. I imagine it has to do with either using a different kernel or some device tree overlay that for the Pi 4 NixOS hardware supplies, but since we're not using NixOS hardware on the 02W, it is not supplied. I haven't figured that out. There's a number of other ways to control GPIO pins. There's some other Python libraries. Haven't tried any of them. Sound. I don't think the 02W has sound. It might expose it through some of the GPIO pins, but I didn't bother. But the Pi 4 has a headphone jack that you're meant to be able to listen to sound through. In nowhere key. The NixOS hardware repository exposes a flag that is named hardware.raspberry 4 audio enable that, if set true, should manage a device tree entry and set things up for it such that pulse audio should work. It doesn't. The kernel compile flakes out when we try to enable it. I tried it without that stuff. I additionally just put this normal NixOS stuff in the in the configuration, in the NixOS configuration. And that should, I think, produce a running Pulse Audio daemon. It doesn't. Yeah. And if I try to use Awesome Mixer, it just refuses to work. I'm sure these issues can be fixed by someone, somehow. More on that later. I tested Ethernet on the Pi 4. The Pi 02W does not have Ethernet. But when you plug cable into the Ethernet jack Pi 4, it gets an IP address. But for some reason, it's only IPv6. I didn't spend a lot of time trying to. I'm sure that's something silly in my configuration. Also, when I have the Ethernet plugged in and the wireless enabled, it's uncontactable via either of the IP addresses it gets on my network. I have to unplug the Ethernet in order to contact it on its wireless, and I have to shut down the wireless in order to contact it on its Ethernet. Your guess is good as mine, man. Don't know. Bluetooth? No, just does not work. There's some hardware configuration issue. These messages come up on the console. Did not investigate further. USB storage, hooray! USB storage works. Sticking in a USB stick and mounting it on Pi 4 works. I did not try this on the Pi 02W. It might work. Who knows? I don't know. Okay. Conclusions. It is not roses. The experience of using NixOS on some specific Raspberry Pi device is not nearly as nice as it is just using Raspberry Pi OS or even probably Ubuntu, their variant of it for Raspberry Pi stuff. Although the NixOS hardware stuff related to the Pi 4 does help. At least it helps. I think that's what makes GPIO work on the Pi 4, even if nothing else does. So a little mini rant here. This was fairly frustrating to try to track all this stuff down in a better world. Like right now, there is a wiki page or a set of wiki pages about NixOS on ARM Raspberry Pi, and it tells us, some snippets about how to do certain things in some theoretical world or something, and I'm puzzled by this strategy. I mean, I guess I don't want to fault people for trying to document things. That's not the point here, but it seems to me that the entire point of NixOS is to make things build repeatably, and this strategy of sort of Arch Wiki style putting things in the wiki that you can cut and paste and then paste into your configuration files that may not work and may or may not be relevant today is not the best strategy for NixOS, because those snippets, they just bit rot over time, and because we have NixOS, it's also pointless. All the work that somebody put in to figuring this out, to figuring that particular snippet out here, that someone else could paste into their configuration, would have been better serviced by just making their entire configuration file public so that we could run it. I don't quite get this. I guess I get it because it's the way that every other distribution services the needs of people that need to configure their stuff. But NixOS doesn't work like that. It would be much better, as I've done, is to make a repository and publish it to the world. Mine is nowhere near finished, or it might be useful for some people, but certainly something that that configured a specific device at a specific time with a specific set of software would be a heck of a lot more useful. That did it soup to nuts than putting the stuff in here, particularly because all the stuff about audio, Bluetooth, the kernel, these device tree entries, the GPIO that is documented somewhere in here. It's all currently misinformation. None of it works. Uh, I will try not to rant about that. But I mean, in the meantime, there's Raspberry Pi is not like it's not like the PC architecture where there's 100,000 chipsets you got to support, and there's like six configurations. So in theory, if somebody made a configuration that produced a running image that the sound worked and the Ethernet worked and the Bluetooth worked and the GPIO worked and all that stuff, it would stay working. It wouldn't not work tomorrow, and it wouldn't be necessary to tweak it in some way that some zero point 0.01 degree difference configuration would break it, because there is no 1.101 degree configuration difference. It's all that device or the other one. Right. So to my shame, even though I'm ranting about this, I shouldn't, because it won't be me who powers through this. My stagecoach has turned into a pumpkin on trying to get NixOS working reliably on various Raspberry Pi devices, and I will stick with Raspberry Pi OS. I'm glad to have that. It's good. It's all good. And maybe I'll try Nix on that. That's probably a better way to go than to try to run NixOS on Raspberry Pi at this point. So, sorry to be a bummer, but thanks for watching.